All right, everyone, it's the top of the hour, so let's go ahead and get started. Hello and welcome to the September Community of Practice. My name is Jackie Bullis. I'm a faculty support and classroom consultant in Faculty Affairs Department. I am fortunate enough to be the host for this session. Before we begin, I want to let everyone know that TLC 2023 registration is open. The theme this year is working towards YES, open access as innovation in higher education culture. TLC 2023 poses the question, does the culture of higher education need a new paradigm? Visit the link in the chat to learn more about TLC and get yourself registered. Please remember that the community practice sessions and corresponding Teams page provide a space for faculty and staff to come together to learn, discuss, and share ideas. Please participate in the conversation and engage during our breakout sessions. When engaging with our speakers and one another in the chat, please model respect, compassion, and acceptance. Thank you. During this session, we will continue our conversation about the importance of applying course development principles and evidence-based teaching practices to the development of your philosophy of teaching. As we begin, consider how the UAGC culture of care can support your teaching philosophy and encourage reflection on how you as a faculty member can show care to students. Have your personal experiences impacted your teaching philosophy and how that philosophy demonstrates care to students? What impact would you like to have on your students' educational journey? And how does the UAGC culture of care support that impact? Each community of practice is designed to engage our community in collaboration, knowledge sharing, and problem solving to support your own development, which furthers the evolution of the UAGC instructional culture of care. Now I will hand it over to Diana, who will get us started.
Hi, everybody. My name is Diana Bogan. I'm here with Amy Erickson as my co-host, and we are both faculty development and coaching specialists in the Faculty Affairs Department. And we will be sharing out the slide deck, so don't worry about grabbing all the links or anything like that. We'll be sure to share that out to you. So in August, Faculty Affairs launched the academic year 23-24 faculty development curriculum. You may have seen this advertised in the Weekly Digest or, heard about it from maybe some of the other faculty that you're in contact with. This is a year-long opportunity to discuss how educator practitioners, like many of our faculty here, can enhance their course facilitation practices by creating an individual teaching philosophy. This curriculum introduces key learning theories and explains key principles of course design. Educator practitioners have expertise in their fields of study, but often lack backgrounds in the learning theory that informs the design of courses they teach. This gap in understanding can cause a disconnection between course facilitation methods and the intent and outcomes of the course itself. To help resolve that disconnection, we are leveraging these community of practice sessions to explore themes from the curriculum. So in July, we shared that a philosophy of teaching describes your core beliefs about the purpose of teaching and learning, a high-level description of how you teach and why you teach that way, how you think students learn best, and your goals as an educator. Defining these themes for yourself requires reflection on learning theory and how courses are designed to lead students to mastery of learning outcomes. In August, we discussed applying learning theory, such as constructivism, cognitivism, social learning theory, and cognitive load theory. Say that 3 times fast. Using those into your teaching practices. The slides like to be a little delayed. All right, so where we've been, we like to give a little bit of a recap. So just to revisit learning theory briefly, in August, we introduced you to learning theory and how learning theory informs your teaching philosophy. You may recall that learning theories are frameworks that explain how people acquire and retain knowledge. They provide a systematic way to understand how individuals process and respond to new information. Different theories focus on different aspects of the learning process, such as cognitive, behavioral, and then constructivist approaches. We also talked about the benefits of finding learning theory that aligns with your values and beliefs about teaching and learning, which included guiding your approach to course development and facilitation through the lens of learning theory, articulating effective learning and teaching backed by learning theory, and allowing faculty using mostly experience-based methods in their instructional practices to branch out and include evidence-based research. So where we're going to try to go today is we're going to start thinking about keeping in mind how learning theory can guide how we design and facilitate courses. We are going to take a look at backward design, the Socratic method, and then using the Socratic method to spark curiosity in our students and lead them down a path of inquiry. As we walk you through backward design and the Socratic method, you'll see that both require knowing the end goal. Where does the student's learning need to go? Used together, backwards design provides the destination, while the Socratic method can guide students toward that destination. So just for a moment, I want to see if you want to share in the chat, based on what you know about backward design or the Socratic method right now, share what learning theory relates to either one of those methods that you can think of. And you can plop that in the chat, or someone can raise their hand and share if they'd like, whatever you want to do. Absolutely. Adult learning theory, andragogy by Knowles. Donald? Teresa, I think that constructivism and cognitivism, definitely you could see both of those applied here. Yes, Nancy, constructivists, because you are constructing knowledge together, right? That's the purpose of that. All right, you can continue, and I'm going to move along to the next slide. Yes, Sally Vygotsky is definitely going to be in there. So UAGC courses are built using the backwards design method. Backward design centers around identifying a course's main learning outcomes, identifying the knowledge necessary for students to attain those learning outcomes, and then deciding how these outcomes will be assessed. After these have been identified, engaging learning activities are created to provide students with a way to create their own knowledge and skills. Backward design allows faculty to be intentional about establishing outcomes that are necessary for student success. Research supports the effectiveness of this method, as course developers are more likely to organize relevant content that focuses on students achieving course learning outcomes, revisit important material from previous courses, and prepare students for future courses. Using backward design also helps students in that the content in a degree program is logically scaffolded, and formative and summative assessments are aimed at successfully achieving course goals and objectives. So how does this help course facilitators? For starters, knowing what your students need to achieve will help you focus your interactions on the material, resources, and thinking most relevant to their progress, to student progress. This is why it's helpful to understand how a course that uses backward design is built to support student mastery of learning outcomes. Knowing the design steps in backward design allows facilitators to review learning outcomes first, then look at the assessments that will measure student mastery and progress toward learning outcomes. This in turn allows faculty to prepare for discussions, seek out additional resources, provide feedback related to outcomes, and help students succeed with formative and summative assessments. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Amy.
Okay, great. Thank you, Diana. So, Stanford political science professor Rob Reich shared this definition. Socratic inquiry aims to reveal the motivations and assumptions upon which students lead their lives. If you can go ahead and advance the slide, please, Diana. Let's just take a look at a brief video that discusses some important elements of this method.
How to use the Socratic method. The Socratic method is a process of dialogue based on questioning that inspires critical thinking and analysis. Primarily, the method was designed for moral and philosophical inquiry, but the technique can be used in almost any discussion. It helps to structure constructive and even challenging conversations without descending into argument or pure rhetoric. Here are the 5 steps to follow to have a Socratic dialogue. Number 1. Receive. First, receive what the other person has to say. Listen to the other person's premise, view, or argument. And remember, you have to properly listen at this stage to be able to do the next step. 2. Reflect. Sum up the person's viewpoint or argument and reflect it back. Do this by first getting them to clarify and sum up their position, and then by paraphrasing or repeating it back to them. 3. Refine. Ask them to provide their evidence. Find out why they are thinking or acting in that way. Discover the facts, beliefs, or assumptions that underpin their standpoint. Often the premise will be based on assumptions rather than hard facts. Assumptions are fine, but challenge these assumptions to test their validity. Use further questions to uncover fallacy or any wrong presuppositions. You can often use why questions at this stage to help with this. 4. Restate. Now that you have refined your thinking, get them to reformulate and restate their position. If they see that they had a wrong assumption, get them to adapt or renew their wording and then restate it. 5. Repeat. Now they have a new viewpoint, you can go back to the start of the process. You can assess the new premise and challenge any further wrong assumptions in their thinking. This iterative or dialectic process helps to drill down to the core of the issue. This method becomes a cycle of dialogue. And that's it. Simple. The question technique framework is easy to remember, and the skill comes in applying it. The challenge is to really listen to the other person and truly commit to coming to a better shared understanding of the issue. This may come through challenging assumptions or logical viewpoints, but the goal of the Socratic method is not about winning an argument. It is about finding understanding, knowledge, and truth. It's about getting to the heart of an idea. If you'd like more detail on this or similar subjects,
Great. Thank you so much, Diana. So Reich went on to clarify what the Socratic method is and what it is not. He shared the following. The Socratic method uses questions to examine the values, principles, and beliefs of students. The method demands a classroom environment characterized by productive discomfort. The method is better used to demonstrate complexity, difficulty, and uncertainty than at eliciting specific facts about the world. And he noted that it's really important to point out what the Socratic method is not, namely an opportunity to intimidate students, or a situation where the professor is the sage on the stage or the guide on the side. And it also isn't the professor just playing devil's advocate or the all-knowing individual. Instead, it provides an opportunity for what he called shared dialogue. So as it relates to backward design, course developers can consider the big questions related to the course material and even the disciplines in general. What topics will your students need to think critically about? What learning activities would encourage students to analyze, evaluate, and synthesize content? And what questions could be posed in discussions to allow students to examine their own thinking? Now, course facilitators can embrace the backward design approach by examining the course learning objectives and the weekly learning objectives to consider how to frame discussions, what questions to pose, and how to frame their feedback to students. And if you could go ahead and advance the slide, Diana. If you were able to join us in the course development workshop last week, Frank Buccaria reminded us that Socrates said, "I cannot teach anybody anything, I can only make them think." So similarly, educators can't push individuals into learning. However, the Socratic method leads the learner to examine their ideas, beliefs, and assumptions. The Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning at the University of Connecticut noted that by using Socratic questioning, instructors promote independent, higher-level thinking in their students, giving them ownership of what they are learning through discussion, debate, evaluation, and analysis of material. And as you can imagine, this is really important in an era of fake news and entertainment channels posing as news sources. Evaluating content and examining beliefs is paramount. It's also valuable for instructors to understand and identify assumptions or misinformation related to the content they're teaching. Instead of simply telling a student their information is incorrect, a series of questions can be posed to dig deeper into the origins of student ideas, allowing them to uncover the strengths or weaknesses of their own position. And as the video reminds us, unlike what students see modeled in social media and media in general, this practice is not about winning an argument, but rather listening and coming to a deeper and shared understanding. Okay, if you could go ahead and advance that, thank you. So the following are some ways that the Socratic method could inform one's teaching practice. It can encourage thoughtful analysis of sources, content, and even alternate viewpoints. Can provide a helpful framework for promoting information literacy. It'll allow you to engage in big questions that transcend the classroom. And as you may recall, that's a high impact practice. And it allows instructors to model a willingness to continually learn from the students. So let's go ahead and I'm going to hand it back to Diana here before we go into the breakout sessions.
All right. Thank you, Amy. So we're going to do something a little different this time. If you've ever been with us for one of these sessions before, we normally just send you off into breakout sessions and give you a question to think about. But this time, I'm super excited to welcome our guest today from the Academic Engagement Center. Dr. Chris Foster oversees the philosophy courses in our general education curriculum. He is joined today by two of his associate faculty, James Steve and Jordan Seidel. Dr. Foster, James, and Jordan will be leading the breakout sessions today.
Awesome. Thank you. So glad to have this group. I'm really excited to chat with you. We're going to use the Socratic method to talk about the Socratic method. We're going a little bit meta today. But first, I'm going to start with a couple of quotes from Socrates about the Socratic method. I put them in the chat. Education is the kindling of a flame, not the filling of a vessel. And then here's this next one is directly about the Socratic method. I am like the midwife in that I cannot myself give birth to wisdom. The many admirable truths which they bring to birth have been discovered by themselves from within. It's almost as though people are pregnant with the truth, and his job is to help them to bring forth their own children. So I kind of like that perspective. It's a very memorable one. So let's go ahead and start. I have just basically a couple questions. Do students learn more from the Socratic method? And how can we use the Socratic method in the online environment? So let's start. Do you feel that students learn more from the Socratic method?
Hi, Chris. This is Nina. I do. I really like the Socratic method, and I use it a lot. And when I craft my discussion responses, I try to identify what they said and talk about what they said in their post about whatever the question is. But then I always try to ask some Socratic question, some question that will ask them to dig deeper. And I also try to associate that question with what's happening currently, maybe in their lives, like in the news or at work, or over the course of COVID. I use it a lot to talk about, because I'm teaching HR stuff, strategy and compensation and benefits and those kinds of things. And so I would ask questions like, has your company done anything to be able to support this idea and to help your employees through this period, this difficult period? If so, what did they do? If not, now that we've studied this, what do you think they should have done or could have done differently? And many of the students really engage with that kind of response, even though I tell them, responding to me doesn't count for your classmate responses. But I really appreciate, excuse me, I really appreciate it. And I will continue the dialogue with you if you dialogue with me. So, and many of them really, really do. And I think it helps the whole discussion because everybody gets to see that as we're, as we're discussing in the big discussion board. So I say yes.
I love that. Do you feel that with with your approach where you're asking them to produce their own ideas, that their learning is more self-motivated?
And it's connected to something real for them, right? Something that they are actually experiencing. And so I've done everything backwards in my life. So I'm studying my doctorate now for education and learning. And so I'm just learning all this theory stuff, but I have all this other experience and practice before this that gave me insights into some of the things that are real for people when they learn. And of course, being in HR for 40 years helped a lot to, know a lot of things about how people learn and react and stuff too. So a lot of my approach was out there, but I didn't know why it worked the way it worked, right? Now I'm learning why it works, which that's really fascinating to me and really enjoyable from the standpoint of being able to say, oh yeah, so I wasn't just making this up. This is really, this is true, right? This is why it works this way.
Thank you so much, Nina, and the whole group. Do you feel that students learn more deeply and authentically when the Socratic method is used?
Well, today I'm in the role of an associate faculty that teaches philosophy. And since Chris is my program chair, I probably better say something. As an undergrad, I learned what I learned from the Socratic method is I better not come to class unprepared and pretend I am prepared, because that didn't work too well. But I think in our classes that we teach in philosophy, I really think I'm teaching the ethics course right now, that using that kind of questioning around ethical issues really helps students uncover the assumptions that they came to class with. Also, and I sometimes teach logic, but not very often, but even within ethics, to help them uncover, and I try to do it gently, the fallacies that may undergird some of their assumptions. Some of their assumptions are great. They're right on. And I also try to be open because our students have amazing lived experience that even at 65, I don't have. And so I think when I'm open to their experiences and allow myself to be vulnerable that I don't know it all, that really builds a bridge with them. And then my questioning, I think, carries, I always say it's kind of like parenting. It carries some ethical weight if I've helped build that relationship first. So that's a very long way of saying yes.
Yeah. All of these comments, I'm glad you brought up logic, because it's only recently, and these sessions have brought it to my mind, to the forefront of my mind, that there's an irony if you teach logic as just memorizing of certain words, right? If you just teach a list of fallacies and they memorize those and they spit them out, there's an irony there. You've taught them about logic, but you haven't actually taught them to do logic, right? They have to do it themselves. I have a couple of quotes here I'm going to put in the chat from Albert Einstein. Education is not the learning of facts. It is the training of the mind to think. And he also said, I never teach my pupils. I only attempt to provide the conditions under which they learn. Yeah. Are they really doing critical thinking if they're just memorizing? I mean, think of the Bloom level of that, right? Thank you. I want to hear from everybody. What ways can we practice, or other ways can we practice Socratic method in the online classroom?
I like to give an example of how we use that method in the world of programming and cybersecurity. When I teach a programming course, I don't give them all the facts. I give them the concept, and I expect for them to fill in the gaps. And that is right there is having them go out, stepping out of the box, not hand feeding them. And then when they come back with a question where they don't understand something, then we are creating dialogue, and I am replying to them and they're asking me questions. And I think that right there facilitates a learning process. And that's just one of the ways that I do when I teach a programming course.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much, Dr. Pete. Yeah. Anybody else? Other ways that we can work Socratic method in the online environment?
Hey, Chris. Greetings, everyone.
Hi.
I think for me, I like leaning toward the questions that are open ended that get them thinking. And I mentioned in the last gathering that my mentor, before I started realizing what was going on, is he would always say, he would say something to me that drove me nuts. And he always say more. And I'm like, I've answered your question. Why are you still asking me more? Why are you making me think? And then it hit me. Oh, and that's how it kind of clicked. So sometimes a good way of doing it is just to simply say more. And I'll tell you, I have a blended family. My kids hate it. I do it at the dinner table. They hate it because it gets their brain generating things. So that's my only point.
I love all these ideas. You know, what you just said reminded me of something said in the main meeting, which was they talked about productive discomfort. And when you mentioned how they'll ask you, say more, and you're like, well, I just said it. And they're like, oh, what more? Productive discomfort. Do we create productive discomfort? Or in what ways can we produce that in an online setting? Thank you. Any other ideas? I had a student that we were team teaching the class. This was years ago, but the class changed his life because of just what you were saying there, James, that the teacher, one of the other teachers was like, this is, basically saying, give me more. And the student's like, what more do you want from me? And he's like, oh, I get it. You want something deep. You want something authentic. And the student later told me that changed his life. Do we practice productive discomfort? Any other ideas?
Chris, hey, Kate Johnson. I am on children duty, so I'm off camera. I apologize. One of the things that I was thinking about as you were talking is Paulo Freire's ideas on raising consciousness and how he believed it was not, in fact, as educators, our responsibility to, point out places of oppression in people's lives or to alert them necessarily that these are the things that you need to go after, but in fact, to raise their consciousness and build their critical thinking skills so they can identify where oppression lives in their life. They can identify where there are faults in their society, in their democracy, if they have it, in their social circles, etc. And truly, and he had this whole idea around banking. Students are not banks with which we deposit education, kind of like what you were talking about. And we've heard it's a kindling, right? It's a lighting of a fire. It's developing that curiosity. But I do think, and I think we probably could have like an entire conversation about that, like discomfort. There's one of my children. How do we get our students comfortable with being uncomfortable? And then I'm gonna have to get off.
Well, that's really apt that your child came in the room. I was thinking about Socrates, and he goes further with, I just did a tiny little excerpt, but he goes further with it. Basically, this is not a quote, but if you hand somebody a baby and say, take care of this, how are they going to feel? Versus if they create a baby and go through labor and then it's their baby, how are they going to feel about taking care of it? It's a very different experience, and that's very graphic. But in terms of students, if you give them a bunch of stuff to memorize, how are they going to feel about the class and about that learning, as opposed to if they are made to generate their own ideas, right? With painstaking research and thinking, how are they going to nurture those ideas thereafter? Any other thoughts of how we can use critical thinking in online context?
I just wanted to piggyback a little bit. I know I already spoke. I'm sorry. Well, first of all, the first week my son was born, I kept waiting for his real parents to show up who knew what they were doing. But just to piggyback on what Kate said, and you're talking about productive discomfort. I think that word productive is so key because it's almost like we want to raise to a level of discomfort where they want to know, like, they want to do the work to go to the next level. But if we make it so uncomfortable, if we're critical in a way of we can be critical to the point that we're not really looking at the idea, where it's almost like intellectually threatening them and they'll shut down. So it's getting just that level of, the itch that they want to scratch and keep going. So
yes. Well, Socrates was sort of notorious for sometimes being a little critical. But if we use his own metaphor of the baby, right? You don't tell someone they have a bad baby, right? You help them to give birth to their ideas and nurture them. So I love that, Sally. Excellent.
Christopher, I came across another example that I don't know might be helpful. And I can't remember the gentleman's name that was telling it, but I don't think that's what's important because since I heard it from him, I heard it from some other sources too. But it's how lobsters grow. So lobsters are really teeny and they have a hard shell when they're born. And when they outgrow their hard shell, they have to go into hibernation under a rock somewhere. And then they lose that old shell and they stay in hibernation until their new shell forms over them. And then they come out. And they keep doing that over and over and over again. And it's the only way they can grow is to be uncomfortable and step back and figure out what they need for their new shell before they can come back out again. And for me, that metaphor was pretty interesting in terms of thinking about how we grow, because it is uncomfortable. And sometimes we feel like we do have to hide when we're trying to grow and take on something new. But if we actually continue to push through it, we will step up to the next level, and continue to grow. So I just thought I'd share that story as something we might be able to use with the students too sometime.
I love that. I've also been teaching in the honors department a little bit. Thank you to my friend Clifford Lazard, and we think of that context as producing leaders, right? And then I realized the reason I brought it up is then I realized, oh, that applies to all our classes, right? They shouldn't just walk away learning content and passing a quiz. They should walk away having actually felt empowered, right? That what to do with their ideas. Thank you. Other ways that we can work Socratic method into online teaching and the ways that deepens students' learning.
Well, if no one else is going to talk, this discussion's reminding me of this. Oh gosh, she's a professor of neuroscience and education and psychology at Stanford. Her name is Mary Imordino Young, and she talks about why create these courses where this one person creating the course has the idea or the answer they want students to get, instead of involving, having certain projects that the students want to go out and learn about, whether it's something in their community or whether it's some solution they want to come up with, but to get them invested in that sort of versus, as you noted, heaps and heaps of memorization. What's the point of that when they can really dig their teeth into something meaningful and real, and that they're really interested in, and still involves all these different skills that we want to cultivate in students. I just kept thinking that as you guys were talking, and I thought, oh, she's wonderful and very interesting individual.
Thank you, Amy. That is fantastic. And it got me thinking, do you all feel like we are able to practice the Socratic method just as well in the online environment?
Chris, that's a great question. I'm a person who loves being able to look my student in the eye and walk the classroom. And I mean, there are some cultural pieces that go with that too, and I learned some very hard lessons. But I, I think you can do it, and it takes a lot of the cultural piece out because you put the question out there, they see it, you see it, they can read it, reread it. They're not necessarily put on the spot at the moment. I think it can be done. Like I said, I enjoy doing it face to face, eye to eye, but yeah, I think it could be done.
In some ways, oh, sorry. Go ahead, Pete.
No. I was just gonna say, it's done through, active learning, self-reflection, and all of the discussions and giving them feedback and I think in me, because I not only do I teach the programming, but also teach cybersecurity, and we have a lot of hands-on labs. And they're literally they're doing problem solving, which is part of this method, and I think we can do it online.
Absolutely.
And I was just going to say really quickly that I think it's easier actually in some ways online because all of the students have to participate. When you're in the classroom and eye to eye, you get one or two that will answer your question. If you put it out there to all of our students in the classroom and carry it on with them one-on-one, you get everybody engaged.
I love that. As we're almost out of time here, I'll say that's my experience as well. Like in person, there's big participators, but they're a minority. Online, our discussion forums, they can all be creators. They can do their own thinking and show it to everybody. So thank you everybody for participating. It was great. I love the feedback.
Thank you, Chris. It looks like everybody's trickling back in. Amy and I were treated to get to peek in on your discussion. Normally we wait out here and let you guys just go and talk about it without us influencing you in any way, but it was fun to watch the discussions happening. Well, I would, this is the time that we invite you to share your takeaways from your discussions, ask more questions. Would love to hear from the different rooms about your experience and what you thought of today's session. So if anyone wants to raise their hand or just unmute, type in the chat, whatever you're comfortable with.
Well, what did we miss as we were coming back into this main room?
Well, Nina was discussing if it's easier or harder to participate in the Socratic method online, and having just a good discussion on that, how that online environment allows those students that maybe wouldn't take those chances in person to speak up. And then there's people like me who need a little bit of time to process. I sometimes just can't shoot off a response and really have it meaningful. I need to sit with it and think about it first, and then I can have a deeper discussion if I have that time to reflect.
For you, the online environment would be a good thing. It would give you that time to reflect.
Yes, absolutely.
One takeaway that I have from our breakout session is just the heightened awareness of what questions am I asking in discussions? How am I using the Socratic method just in the questions that I'm asking? And I also liked how James, our leader, asked me, I said, I like to set up conditions that will bring out the best in students in questioning their assumptions, but not in a way that intimidates them. And he said, oh, how would you do that? And so he got real specific, and I couldn't really pinpoint anything. So it just that question alone, James, heightened my awareness of what I can do. So thank you for that.
I really enjoyed our conversation discussion. that Jordan provided. As he was going through his discussion, I thought about the movie The Matrix. And the thing is the steps that the Socratic steps that we're actually offering or practicing with our students do give them the opportunity to reflect on what is taught. But like how Diana was saying, sometimes you need to think about what it is that's actually being said, connect with it, and then you gain what you need to gain from it. So the example with that's why I like to use movies in my class, because sometimes it brings home the theories or concepts that we talk about. And with the Matrix, it my mind exploded when it was a child telling the adult it's not the spoon that bends. It's just like it's actually what you have in you. What Jordan was saying is our students already have what they need to be successful, but they just need to understand how to use those tools that they have in them. So we're technically there to help to get them stirred and to also see the benefit of just thinking critically about something, but they have to, like Jordan said, be led to the water. And all the time, you can't make them drink, but if you help them to understand that the water or the information or whatever they have is their nourishment, and they gain an understanding of how they can turn what they already have in them to being something that's useful or the nourishment that they need, then they get what they need out of the courses. Even though, yes, they're about 6 weeks long, still, when we come in with certain tools and helping them to engage how they learn, and the tools that we actually share with them, I think they come out more beneficial in our courses. So thank you again, Jordan. I was also enlightened today.
Hey, this is Kate. I apologize, I'm off camera. We talked about the concept of, Chris was talking about the concept of productively uncomfortable. And I think you said it better than me. So if you did, unmute and say it or type it. And about how do we, we can often have students who are very sensitive to the questions that are productive discomfort. Thank you, sir. I knew it came. It was better than what rolled out of my mouth. Students can often feel really sensitive to the questions that are asked them or the feedback that is offered to them. But if we are truly approaching the active facilitation to get the students to discover, we have to push them outside of their comfort zone. And Sally also talked about how we have to be very wary of where that line is, so that, and Chris reminded us that Socrates himself was known to be a bit of a fart, in that people thought he was a meanie, because of some of the relentless questioning that he would do to try to push the individual to find that deeper meaning and dig a little bit deeper and find the concept on their own, directing and redirecting. And that, it's through our relationships with our students and through, being vulnerable ourselves. And but anyway, I love the idea of productive discomfort, because it's something that I've always personally felt that like pain and uncomfortability, pain's probably a bad word, is a great motivator. But also, how are we not, rather than depositing information into our students, how are we like building that curiosity through the questions that we ask? And so I really think Chris and the rest of the philosophy professors who are here, probably you're going to have to help us develop some additional curriculum just on like give us some, real tangible ways that we can work this out. And I'll take that conversation offline, but
That's great. I like that productive discomfort too. I listened to a motivational speaker once, and they said that nothing magical happens in your comfort zone. And so I kind of have written that down because it's true. If you're always in your comfort zone, that nothing really brilliant happens, right? Teresa, you've had your hand up for a little bit, so go ahead.
Well, Kate was just making me think because that's what she often does. No, actually, since our session on Tuesday, I've been thinking about the idea of productive discomfort and thinking through the possibility that scaffolding or digging into and leveraging the zone of proximal development is what could make the discomfort more productive and less uncomfortable, or more appealing and more productive. The excerpt that James had our group read on Tuesday of the Meno, I realized that as that story is told, the questions that Socrates is asking his students are kind of scaffolding the student up to the point where it's like, well, okay, I don't know this, but perhaps using that scaffolding, it's less like the student is like looking off into some abyss, but realizing that they actually have like a ladder in front of them that they can keep walking up. So, I don't know the answer, but Kate, to your point of like, how do we apply the Socratic method in the most productive and sensitive way? Maybe a root of that is in scaffolding.
That is something to think about. Well, we are quickly running out of time. We have just a little bit more to share with you. Not a lot. Let me reshare my screen here. So at the end of these sessions, and before I move on, I just want to thank Chris and Jordan and James so much for leading our discussions today. We have gotten some really amazing feedback that people have really enjoyed these two sessions, and I am just so happy to see involvement from our associate faculty in leading these discussions. So if you're watching this, keep that in mind as we continue this series. If you see an upcoming session that just is, you have a burning desire to be a part of, please reach out and we can have a conversation about that. But one thing we do like to do is we like to leave you with something to kind of be like homework, something for you to think on past the session. I know everybody wants homework, right, Ramona? I saw you laughing. So, this curriculum is all around our teaching philosophy, right? And so we want you to think about how the Socratic method informs a teaching philosophy, how it might permit an instructor to encourage students to examine their ideas, beliefs, and values, how it might help to foster critical thinking skills and think deeply about one's positions. The usefulness of teaching students to explore and question topics will transcend multiple disciplines. So then if we go back to our backwards design, thinking that if that provides faculty with the destination, then the Socratic method is one way that facilitators can help students kind of plot their course to that destination. They might not arrive at the same point, and they shouldn't take the same path because everybody's journey is individualized. But it is a way to help them kind of arrive where you want them to arrive. The key here is that when you are incorporating the Socratic method into your teaching philosophy, it shows that you value helping students through their educational journey by asking them higher order thinking questions, differentiating your instruction, and you're guiding students through applying their learning. So here is the homework part. And remember, the teaching philosophy, the reason why we're doing this is that it helps you be more effective in applying your beliefs about how students learn and executing your methodology for classroom instruction. So we want you to consider how using the Socratic method informs your teaching practices, how it could be used in the online environment, and then what elements you would incorporate into your teaching philosophy. And if you're willing to share those, we have a link here, but it will also be in the digest and sent out on the Community of Practice Teams channel. We encourage you to join that conversation there. And Amy and I are still offering one-on-one reviews of your teaching philosophy, continuing the conversation if you want someone to look at your philosophy statement and then just get some feedback and ask questions and go from there. All right, and I will hand it back over to Jackie to close us out.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Diana and Amy, and thank you all for attending our session today. We hope that this session contributed to the development of your teaching philosophy. As always, we encourage you to continue the conversation in the community practice teams and come together as one faculty and staff to learn, discuss, and collaborate on topics related to pedagogy, instruction, and university initiatives. The content from this presentation and discussion will be posted in the Community Practice Teams channel by the end of the week, aka some point tomorrow. Faculty, please note that participation in the community practice may fulfill your professional development credit. Check with your program chair to confirm. Please mark your calendars for the October 2023 sessions, which will be on October 3rd and October 5th. And for everyone in the back, spread the word and do not forget, please register for TLC 2023. If you are interested in leading any future community practice session, please send us a message at facultyaffairs@uagc.edu. Thank you all so much and have a wonderful Thursday. We appreciate you all for coming.